Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Conservative Corner. I'm Elliot Margolis, and I'm here with a special guest today, Jody Meyer from the Danvers Catholic Collaborative. Thank you for coming, Jody.
Thanks for having me.
What we're going to talk about today is human trafficking. And you're going to say, well, why would we talk about that here on the North Shore? You'll find out. Jody, tell us about trafficking and what is it and how significant is it in the North Shore?
Okay. So I've learned recently that it's a bigger problem than I ever thought it was. Human trafficking is actually the use of force or fraud or coercion to get somebody to provide either organs or labor or sexual favors. So you're taking away someone's will, basically, by one of these things. And I think we all understand what force would be if you see someone grabbed at the shopping center, a child grabbed, that's force. But the fraud now is so big, and a lot of the stories that I've heard deal with the fraud, whether it's someone that doesn't feel connected and they reach out and it starts as a boyfriend and they're grooming them that way, that they act like they're a boyfriend or they're misrepresenting themselves on the internet. They're not even showing who they actually are. So that's the grooming. So that's the fraud that gets a lot of people sucked into this. And then coercion is a big reason why a lot of kids can't get out of it, because they might threaten their brother or their family, or they'll say, you're just going to go to prison because now you have prostitution on your record. So it's force, fraud, or coercion, and a lot of those things are a little more hidden, I think, than we would recognize.
Well, are there laws against this? I mean, I know there's laws against prostitution, but forced prostitution, it's really not the victim's fault.
Right.
Are they protected?
So there is no federal law that would take that criminality off of their record, let's say. There's about half the states have vacatur laws where that's wiped out. But a lot of times it starts out by a choice. So someone befriends this young girl, and maybe she's disconnected in some way, either with her family or maybe she's a runaway, or anyone that's unsupported. A lot of times those are the people that are very vulnerable. So someone reaches out and they start out just being so kind and being a wonderful friend and buying her things and all of that. So it starts out a lot of times as a relationship. And then it moves into, and this person is purposely grooming, and that's, the fraud, purposely grooming, and then it turns into, well, help out a little bit here, this is going to bring in a lot of money. And then, it just snowballs. And a lot of the people that get in it, then they're sucked in by that, and then they're making a lot of money, and then a lot of times they turn to drugs. Some of that's desensitization, some of that is someone puts the drugs right, in front of them and gives it to them. So all of those things then keep them in for a while.
Are we talking about high school kids mostly?
Oh, well, the average initial age is about 12.
Really?
Yes, we're working with the Sisters of St. Joseph. Now, that's average. So one of the books that I just read, this young woman was in high school that went into this. And but I would say multiple ages. It's across the board, really.
Is most of this, do you think, because of bad parenting?
No, I wouldn't say that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the victims, probably the most normal probably way that this happens. People that are vulnerable. So vulnerable could be, yes, children that have been abused and abused families. It could be children that have gotten into gangs, runaways, just people that don't feel like they belong where they are. It could be families that are displaced by natural disasters, which are happening more and more across the country. So those people are very vulnerable. Any kids in those situations are very vulnerable, and the traffickers can spot this. Another category is the people that are mentally and physically challenged. Actually, the United States Victims Protection Act for trafficking started because two men were held in slave-like conditions who were mentally handicapped. And there was a case in 2009 in Iowa that 32 men were held, mentally challenged men, were held on a turkey farm for over 20 years. They were abused, they were forced into labor, and that it eventually went to court, and they won and were released, but that was 20 years. But those are mentally challenged people. So anybody that's vulnerable, and that can happen so many ways. I mean, even students that have wonderful support systems at home, but don't feel connected. I taught high school for 52 years, and some of the kids just don't feel like they belong. And a lot of times those are the kids that are reaching out on the internet, just looking for a friend. So
it's fascinating.
It's sad.
Is it fairly significant on the North Shore, this type of trafficking? And obviously the trafficking is not just sexual.
Right. I mean, what we work with are probably just about all of those that come from prostitution. But for example, I think it was last year in Peabody, and this is what some people can do. There was a man that just noticed that a lot of men kept going in and out of this house when he was walking his dog. And he called the local authorities, and they raided the place, and it was a prostitution ring. So it happens. It's in American cities to Americans. I mean, the nuns that we work with the Sisters of St. Joseph in Boston. And it's a big enough, they were approached by the police, the FBI and the state police, to say, help us with this problem. So they started this ministry of creating some safe houses, and there's other organizations. The women religious across the country have really taken hold of this as a ministry and have supported this in many ways. So what we're doing is supporting the Sisters of St. Joseph by the work that we're doing.
Okay, and this is the Danvers Catholic Collaborative.
Right, the Danvers Catholic Collaboratives.
How can people help?
Well, so what we do, basically, besides pray and educate, try to learn ourselves and spread the word that this is going on around us, we're packing backpacks that both the state troopers and the nuns are giving out to people for like a few-day transition, because if they're rescued, a lot of times they have nothing. So we're packing backpacks that have coats and clothing and toiletries and gift card and support cards and things like that. And it costs about $250 to pack one backpack. So what we do is we have a group, and we solicit money, donations. Well, we've kind of morphed. We haven't been in this very long, so we're changing. Every month we're changing. But we started out thinking that, well, people would really like to pack a whole bag, like a family might want to do that and go shopping. And so there's 4 of us that are kind of in the lead on this. So we went out and packed a backpack, and it costs about $250. And then when we put that out to our 2 parishes, which are St. Mary's and St. Richard's in Danvers, and became the collaborative, we got about 20 more people that came in to join and work on this. So what we do, the 4 of us meet every week, and we go through inventory and take care of any of the cash donations and checks and things. And then once a month, the larger group packs backpacks, and then we take them into the Sisters in Boston. So what people can do to help is they can donate. The larger group meets the first Friday of every month at 2:15 at St. Richard's, so they can come and join us. They can call the Danvers Catholic Collaborative, and they'll put them in touch with me, and I'll call them if they want to just donate things. So when we started out thinking, okay, people might want to pack a whole bag, but what happened was people were just dropping things off, and they were very generous, and we've had even local, the Ipswich First Church in Ipswich donated a lot of things that took us a few hours to, put in our inventory. So we've kind of changed. Now we're setting up everything in small, medium, and large, and what we have. And then when the big group gets together, we kind of do an assembly line and pack backpacks to give to the sisters. So.
Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the victims.
Yes.
Because that, I feel so bad for the victims. what can you do to help them? Once you find out that they're involved and they want to get out, or do they always want to get out?
Well, that's a very, very complicated. And first of all, we don't work directly with the victims. The sisters do. I mean, if you think about it, they're not going to share with everyone where safe houses are. I mean, that wouldn't be smart to do. So, but in terms of the victims, just a couple examples, which I've learned recently. We had the Attorney General's office, 4 people from there come up and talk to our collaborative, a state trooper and the victim services chief and the head of the anti-human trafficking task force. And one of the examples that the state trooper gave, and part of this is why it's so complicated and hard for people to get out. She had one of these victims that she was talking with, and she said, "Are you free to leave this?" And the person said, "Yes." And she said, "So do you know what city you're in?" And they said, "No." And she said, "Do you know what your address is, where you live?" "No." "Do you have a key to where you live?" "No." But that person thought they were free to get out. So they really didn't even understand. I think human trafficking, and I'm going to interject this because I think a lot of us have a misconception about it. And partly I think it's because of the word trafficking. I think a lot of the public equates human trafficking with human smuggling. So they've seen in the media, they've seen movies, where people are brought from other countries, but this is happening to American citizens in American cities. And I think the better idea of human trafficking is exploitation. It's anybody that recruits, harbors, provides somebody else basically against what they would really desire. And a lot of that fraud changes that a little bit because they don't recognize it. But anybody that does that, that's trafficking. That's human trafficking. That is the fuller definition of it. And I think most of us had a great misconception of what that is. So kids are exploited. It's for money. It's for profit. It's so sad. And then once they get in, so another example, this woman that's going to actually come and speak to our collaborative, she's a survivor. She's going to come on May 29th to St. Mary's and talk that evening, so people are definitely welcome to come to that. And she talks, I read her book, and in the beginning, her story starts out like a lot of them, that she's befriended by somebody. And so she really develops this love relationship with this person. And then the relationship changes, and the person keeps saying, "I love you, nobody loves you more than I do," and then has other women also, and it ends up being her pimp. And initially he's like, "Oh, we can make all this money," so she prostitutes herself. Again, she's in this love relationship and doesn't really understand initially all of it. And then as it goes on and on for 5 years or so, and drugs come into it, so then she's addicted. So she wants, in this diary, the book is the diary, and she just so often is like, "I want to get out, I hate this, I hate who I am, I want to go home." And then things happen. She either can't, or the drugs, she needs more money, so she prostitutes herself. Even after she goes to rehab and gets out of that and thinks she's okay, she can't afford to live places, so she goes back to prostitution. So it's all mixed in with, the leaving your education, not having a job to go to. So it's so much more complicated. We look at this abuse as any abuse and think, why don't people get out? And yet, after reading her book and hearing her story, just that's one story, I get that. I can see how difficult that would be to get out. And that's part of the reason that this is such a difficult crime, because some crimes are over and done with, but this one just keeps going and going and going.
how can you recognize that something, say, in your neighborhood is actually happening and you don't really think about it or don't want to recognize it? But how do you pinpoint that, gee, there's something wrong over there?
Yeah, I think I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, nobody does, but I think if we start, and this is part of the education, if we start becoming more aware that it's a problem, and we start recognizing, like that man walking his dog, or about 80% of the victims say they were at one point in a hotel. And if you think about it, the way the internet plays into this now, you can book rooms in a hotel without ever being seen. So you can procure a bunch of rooms on a floor. You can just have the women you use, girls that you use, prostitute, boys that you use, prostitute. You have the floor. You may even have somebody that's trafficked in there as staff. I mean, one of the victims that the sisters rescued, that the police rescued, and the sisters, stayed with the sisters for a while, said she was chained to a bed in a hotel and told the staff person coming in, and they did nothing because they were part of that same organization. So back to your question, what do you do? First of all, if you see anything off, do something. Like if it's extreme, you see somebody grab, call 911. But if something just seems off, don't hesitate to call the local authorities. And if local authorities don't move on it, there's a national hotline, trafficking hotline, which is a really easy number to remember. It's 888-FREE, the letters FREE, 888. So it's 888-3733-888. And then the text is BEB FREE, which is 233-733. So the Attorney General's office said, call them. They have a trafficking victim services unit in our Attorney General's office in Boston. So there's places to call, but a lot of it is just starting to become aware. I had a friend tell me, I had somebody knock on my door and they wanted to do this, and they said, their dad was in the street, waiting till it was like some menial task. I said, well, that doesn't sound right at all, right? That would be a real red flag. Who's going to send a kid to, wash windows or whatever and then be standing in the street? Anyway, it just sounded off. I would have checked on that. So in a hotel, seeing a young woman dressed maybe inappropriately, looking uncomfortable, whatever, maybe with a older person, you never know for sure. And the police say don't approach, because that could make things worse for the victim. But call somebody, call an authority.
Yeah, it's and it exists more than people realize.
Yes. I watched a video that was put out in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and it was a longer one, but it was like 3 pictures of these 3 happy teenagers. And then there was a story about it, and then when they went to put the pictures back, there was across this whole gym in this high school, these bulletin boards, giant bulletin boards, with hundreds of pictures, and they've just put them back in. And all of those were in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Do you know any victims that have gotten out of it, and how have they reacted to being out?
So again, a lot of them go back in, partly because of the money. The one that's going to come and talk at our collaborative on the May 29th, she had some support, but she kept trying and trying and trying, and she really says it's God that helped her. She prayed and said, please help me get out of this. So she's very faith-filled, and she talks about that in her book. But it's not easy, which is why it continues, which is why they're in so long. It isn't easy, especially since so often it's connected with drugs, because you want to desensitize, or somebody forces you the first time and you're addicted. And we know addictions are just incredibly hard to break. So.
It's interesting that you say God helped her, she prayed to God, because I've interviewed other people who have been victims, and they've told me the same thing.
Yes, yes.
And that's so important for people to understand that you need to pray, you need to believe, you need to get that kind of help.
Right.
And
that's part in our ministry that are really encouraging. We're praying for the victims. We're praying for the perpetrators. You know, we're praying that they change, that they have a change of heart. So prayers are, I mean, the Holy Spirit's working in this ministry. I can see that. So we got to keep praying. That's for sure.
okay, so now let's talk about you caught somebody who was the pimp, or
Okay, and this is not my expertise, nor my end of anything. So
No,
just
but-
so you know.
but you know, somebody gets caught. Federal law, state law. Is there anything that puts these people away for abusing people?
There definitely. The case that I mentioned in Iowa with the 32 mentally they got a very large settlement after 20 years. So if it comes to court and it's prosecuted like that, yes, you can imagine that, let's say this house in Peabody that was raided. How many of the perpetrators, because if you think about this, we're talking to people that are recruiting and grooming, harboring, you know, providing. So how many people were caught, and what do the other ones do that weren't caught? Move on to someplace else because it's a moneymaker for them. So I don't know much about that end. And again, as I say, we haven't even been in this a year, and we're learning as much as we can and doing the backpacks. But I hope eventually to get into legislation to work on that. So hopefully we'll see. But it's a problem. I know the Attorney General's office, again, they sent 4 people out to talk with a group for the evening, and they're certainly working on it. But they even said sometimes they have to approach someone that they know is being trafficked multiple times before they can pull them out. And again, part of that's the coercion of how are they going to be harmed? How is somebody in their family going to be harmed? So it's just not an easy problem. You don't just fix it.
Yeah, it just seems like, I mean, the people that are abusing the women or the men, it doesn't matter,
Right.
They need to be put away for a long time.
Definitely.
And it seems to me that this is a job for our state reps, for our Congress people.
For everyone.
Maybe instead of fighting about the parties, fight for the people.
I'm with you. You know, and the other piece of this is that people that watch pornography, they get desensitized to the violence and to the dehumanization of what's going on with these people. And who do you think are the people that are hiring the prostitutes, right? Where does it start? How does somebody do that? And, you know, it's probably not a far cry to recognize that they know this person, even though it seems like they're doing it of their free will and they want to be doing this for the money and they act like they're very happy and giving whatever. You got to know that is not the case with most of these young prostitutes.
Well, one of the things that you said earlier, which kind of surprised me, you meet somebody online or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
they tell them how much they love them and everything, and
Right.
and then they start pimping them out.
Mm-hmm.
That's a clue. I mean, you don't love somebody and have them being pimped out.
I know. But if you feel unsupported, and this is the first person, or this is someone that, you know, let's say you felt so disconnected in school, and, you know, we've seen that with mass shootings and things. It's always people disconnected, right?
Yeah.
And so it's same kind of deal. Now somebody's really taken the time to show you how much they care, to buy you things, and you've never had something like that before. It's very confusing. It's so easy to look on the outside and say, okay, that's obvious. But it doesn't seem that that's the way it feels. And again, I'm going to keep studying and find more stories and I'm learning. That was a big surprise to me.
I'm wondering about these younger girls who living at home. The parents don't see anything.
So one of the cases that the sisters told me about, a young girl that they had rescued, was going to high school, was living at home, was sneaking out at night to prostitute because they told her they would kill her brother. Started out as a date, and then on like the second or third date, it turned into something else, and then that is what they told her. And so she continued to do that. She'd go out and they would sell her, multiple times a night, and then she would sneak back home and go to school the next day. And that's one of the local ones that the sisters had in their safe house. So it's mind-boggling, and that's why I'm trying to get more and more stories so that I understand it better. I'm looking forward to Jasmine Grace is the name of the woman that's coming to speak, and this is a big ministry. She does her own ministry also, and will donate to that when she comes to talk. But she'll probably have even more. And again, reading her book, you see some of the other victims and what's going on, and the other wives, as they call them. And yeah, on the outside, you just think, well, just leave. But it just is not. After reading, that's the part that in her book that really affected me the most is, wow, how hard it is. Like anybody that you know that's an alcoholic or drug addicted or whatever, any of that, how hard that is to get away from. So
it's a remarkable story. It's still hard to believe that it exists.
I know.
But we got a minute to go. If you'd like to just say a few more things about the ministry and how people can get in touch with you and donate to you.
So people can call the Danvers Catholic Collaborative. We're on 94th Street. The office is there. And once a month, the first Friday of every month, if you're interested in joining us, at 2:15, we have a short meeting, and then we pack backpacks. People can contribute. You can drop anything off at the offices there. If you write a check, the check has to be made out to the Sisters of St. Joseph. They are the 5013C organization, and then as soon as any checks that we give them, they give us the cash right away, and we buy all the items for the backpacks. And as I said, like I just bought 18 lightweight jackets because we're turning to like that spring, and we used about all of them last Friday. So, now buy more. So there's a lot to buy, because the good thing is we're packing pretty many backpacks, which is great. But pray for the victims, pray for the perpetrators, just that we can change this. And yes, if you know more about legislation, call the Danvers Catholic Collaborative and let me know if you think of other ways to help. So and then on May 29th, if you'd like to come and see a presentation, we're at St. Mary's, which is 24 Conan Street, at 7 p.m. And thank you for having me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for coming, and I hope you got something out of this, and I hope you start doing something about it, because it's real important. Thanks for watching.